Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today is a huge day for me. The payoff is finally here after the hours and hundreds of hours I put into this car getting it ready for paint. We're going to be painting this car right here in my garage. Hopefully I can show you guys some tips and tricks how to do your project in your garage. Now always remember guys, you want to check with your state, local authorities, the government, the EPA and all that as far as what you can and can't do in the area that you're in. I happen to be in the middle of nowhere, so here we go. Now before we get real in-depth on the video when I get ready to paint this car today, I do want to show you kind of what it's taken to get to this point. So check that out now. What are you doing in the trunk, Angel?
Back masking.
And what's back masking gonna do?
Keep us from getting blue paint inside the black trunk.
Inside that nicely fresh painted black trunk, huh? So what are we doing tonight on the car?
Finally! Finally we're jamming.
So that means we're gonna paint the
door
jams.
jams.
Oh, and then we're gonna get the car assembled and then paint the whole car, right?
Woo, yeah.
It's been a long time
Oh
coming.
my God. You have no idea.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Kind of take you through what it took to get to this point, and here we are. So, I cannot stress enough, if you're going to do a project like this in your garage or anywhere, preparation is the key. Painting can be stressful, but you want to reduce any amount of stress that you can by getting yourself properly prepared, get everything out, get everything set before you ever mix the first drop of paint. So let's talk about that. So tip number one, and you even see this a lot of times in professional paint booths, I've got outdoor carpet in here. I can reuse this on the next paint job. I bought it really inexpensive at Menards. I think I paid like 50 cents a square foot for it. I can reuse this. I'll wet this down, also wet the concrete. As an alternative solution, you can actually just wet your garage floor down. Now, depending on temperature and humidity and things like that, that sometimes could be an issue with it drying faster than you keep up when you're trying to worry about paint. So having the carpet will definitely keep the dust down. Also, as you can see overhead, I've got plastic directly over the car. That's going to prevent any dust from the ceiling falling down onto my freshly painted surface. Another tip, make sure you get your workstations ready to go. As you can see, I've already got the gun. I'm going to actually be using a Black Widow to put my base and my clear on. I've even got a much more expensive gun, but I've really fallen in love with this gun, so that's what we're going to use. I've got my PPS cups over here ready to go. I'm using Limco Supreme Plus base coat. That's my reducer for it. And then my next step will be, of course, clear coat. We should only need 2 coats for this. This stuff covers really, really well. It's a lot thicker than some other bases, so you have to kind of prepare for that. Always look at your TDS sheets on any products that you're going to use for proper mixing ratios, looking at your dry times depending on your relative temperature, also your flash times in between coats, because you do not want to get ahead of yourself and cause yourself issues if you're not looking at your TDS sheets. So guys, you really want to make sure you take the time to practice on the car. So when I say by practice, you want to go ahead and get your paint gun out, walk around the car, make sure you're able to reach all the surfaces without your body touching the car. So you need to make preparations for that. I did that very thing on this car. Now, something that's not in this video, I've already painted the roof on this car. I did that separate, and the reason why, because the roof is a different color than the rest of the car. The roof is Indiana Ivory, and the rest of the car is Larkspur Blue, which is kind of a pastel baby blue with a little bit of green. These are actually factory original colors to a 1957 Chevy. Only issue that I found that I would have had is right here on the hood. These are really big, wide cars. And for me to reach over to the center of the hood, my belly, I'm not a small guy, would be touching the fender. Okay, so I need to make preparations for that. Now, if I put like a normal stand, like a step stand that I usually would use for the roof, well, then my problem is I'm probably up a little too high, and then I'm probably unbalanced leaning over the car. So literally go through and practice your moves. Of course, what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to be using a little stair step. I don't need to go to the top. The good things about these is you can rest the front of your legs on this while you're leaning over to help balance yourself. So always think about that. You really want to go through the motions of painting the whole car before you ever mix any paint. And guys, by doing all these preparations, you're really going to set your mind at ease knowing that you're ready to go. When you go to mix that paint, then the clock starts. Then you know everything's out, it's ready to go, and then you can go to work. Speaking of that, let's do that now. One of the last steps you're going to do before you get ready to paint the car is thoroughly clean it. I like to do at least 2 complete passes with wax and grease remover. Then I like to use isopropyl alcohol with a lint-free cloths. So I'm just going to use normal shop paper towels, and these don't have real heavy lint in them for the wax and grease remover. Then I use these wipe alls, and that's literally what they're called, wipe all. They're a very low lint wiping cloth, and that's what I'll use, the isopropyl alcohol, which would be my final cleaning stage. And then of course, before I actually put any base coat on it, I'll actually run a tack cloth over the whole car, and then we'll start painting. I'll take my wax and grease remover, really like to saturate the surface, work one surface at a time. I'll do maybe one panel at a time. So what this is doing, this is removing any greases, any waxes, anything that's on the surface that could potentially cause the paint not wanting to adhere to it. So we'll go ahead and clean this up really, really well. I'll do 2 complete passes with this, and then we'll go with the lint-free isopropyl alcohol. Alright, so that was the first round of wax and grease removal. I'm going to go ahead and do it one other round. Now this is when I'm going to start being a lot more careful about touching the car. Of course, go ahead and get some gloves on. That way I don't get any oils off my skin onto the surface of the car. We really want to treat it as a sterile environment. Alrighty, she's all clean. We'd actually completely cleaned the car first before we were ever on camera, just normal cleaning. 2 complete passes with wax and grease remover, and then 1 complete pass with isopropyl alcohol with lint-free or low-lint cloths. So now she's ready. One thing left to do before we start painting on her, and that'll be tack cloth. But that will be the absolute last thing I do before I actually start putting paint down. So a couple of things that I need to get done right now would be, if you're going to wet the floor, now's the time to do it. Also, I want to make mention of the air system that you're using. Gosh, guys, don't listen to everything you hear about you got to have this huge compressor, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Look, when you look at guns, look at CFMs. I know Eastwood, and I've used one of those guns. They sell some low CFM HVLP guns. Really good gun, by the way. But most of your more professional grade guns are going to take anywhere between 11 and 13 CFM. So no matter how big the compressor is, you got to look at sustained CFM at that pressure. And most of your smaller compressors can't keep up with that. But if you're painting slow and doing panel by panel, you can. You just don't want to let your compressor run out. And also, the biggest thing you want to think about when you're going to paint your car in your garage is water. Water that's in the air. So when your air compressor generates air, that air is hot. It's generating heat. As that air cools inside of the line, it creates water. So what you have to do, you have to have some type of dryer system. There's a ton of stuff you can look at out there. You can even buy some cheap stuff at Harbor Freight. Actually, I have more professional grade system here, so I don't have to worry about getting anything in my system, but I've used cheaper versions too before. They work just fine. Some type of dryer system, not just a water separator. You need some type of dryer that uses like the silica decusant beads in it. This is so this is what I use, guys. So this is a pretty extensive system, and this is basically, this whole cartridge here is just a cartridge full of those decusant drying beads, and it gives you a little indicator when it's good or bad. But I think the cartridge that goes in this thing, and also the replacement for these, is like 100 something bucks each time, but it lasts me a good while. You can get a lot cheaper versions if you're out there looking at Harbor Freight or something like that, a lot smaller dryer systems. Also, I know Eastwood sells a hose that you can put on that attaches to your air hose right before it goes into the gun, that has these beads in it. So you really want to make sure you're not getting any water whatsoever in that system. Also, you can put your little filters right there on the very end, right before it goes in the gun too. Those an extra, I guess, insurance. I usually don't use them because this system I've got here is so good. I've never had an issue with getting water in my airline. So other than that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get this floor wetting down really good. Go mix up my base, get it loaded up, tack cloth, and we're ready to start painting. I've got all the water down. Car's clean. I've got my brand new tack cloth out here, and this is something you always want to think about, is that you need to let your tack cloth, if it's brand new, get it out, let it relax, let it breathe for, gosh, good 15-20 minutes. I've got my fancy ventilation system set up back here. Ta-da. So guys, I'm getting ready to go ahead and mix my base, have it ready to go, load it up in my gun. I'll put you guys on time lapse, and we'll get ready to put this first coat of base on the car. Well, coat 1 is on. And I'll tell you guys, this Limco Supreme Plus, I'll show you the base that I'm using on this car. Normally when you put your base coat on, in my past, and I'm not a professional painter by any means, you know, you're just looking for a truly just a base coat. You're not looking so much for coverage. You just want to get it on there even and then build it from there. But this base, and it's a little better than what I used to use. It's the second time I've painted with it. Yeah, I mean, gosh, I'll show you guys here in a minute, but it almost looks like you could put clear coat on it. I'm not, but that's how well it covers. And guys, this whole car and these 4 rims, I only used about, let's see, what's left in here. I'm going to guess probably right in the neighborhoods of 30 35 fluid ounces for the first coat. Yeah, I mean, this stuff covers very well, very well. So yeah, so here's the so I'm using the Limco Supreme base coat, and man, this stuff just, I mean, if you buy a gallon of this and you get a gallon and a half of sprayable by the time you add your reducer, because it's a 2-to-1, this stuff goes way further than, say, the Nason that I was using before. So yeah, it's great. So let's take a look at it. I mean, guys, and I was moving the gun pretty quick. I had the fluid turned down pretty good too, but look at the coverage. And let me see if I can. I got a light on this thing. Let me turn this light up. I mean, look at the coverage on this. There's the back I just painted, so it's going to look still a little more shiny on the back. So anyway, guys, I mean, I like this base. I probably bought more than I needed, but hey, it'll be all right. Let's get that second coat on here and that once I get the flash time ready. It's time for the fun part. Let's get this clear on. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and tack cloth this really good before I put the clear on. Make sure I've got everything wet on the floor and on the concrete, because if any of the base that's got on the concrete, which it pretty much just falls as dust, if you don't get that wet before you put your clear down, that clear is going to fall on that base coat, and then that's going to become part of your concrete floor. So we're going to go ahead and do that, get this thing tack clothed. I may set you guys up on a time lapse. The thing is, with clear, it creates a cloud in here, and I don't want that getting on my camera. Let me see if I can come up with something so I can get you guys on time lapse while I'm putting clear on the car. Well, guys, I got the first coat of clear on. It looks good. Now remember, when you're putting clear on, you typically you're not looking to make it look like it's a finished clear. You're just getting that coat on there that's really going to give this second coat. And I'll crank up that volume on this second coat and really lay it on there so it really has a surface to stick to. If you lay that first coat of clear on real thick, you've got a potential for big runs. So put that first coat on fairly light, then we'll layer that second load on and we'll put it on there good and thick. But it still looks great, guys. As you can see, it looks good, but it doesn't look finished because I put not a heavy coat. I would call it more of a medium coat on for the first round, and this second round we'll be ready to rock. We picked this car up even before I started YouTube and realized real fast that we got in way over our heads. I know how to do paint and body and kind of learned on my own how to do a lot of that stuff, and I'm decent with a wrench. I'd never call myself a mechanic or a motor builder or any of that stuff. I'm just a DIY guy. I kind of figure it out. I YouTube it. I talk to folks, and I think you can really do anything if you put your mind to it. But to totally restore a car, especially a car of this age, it is quite the undertaking. And it's going to be rewarding when we're done, but at the end of the day, it's been a lot. And we ended up needing 2 cars to make one once we got this car. Long story on all that. No need to get into all the details, but we had issues. And it was just easier just to get a donor car to make this 2-door car a whole car. So all the work that's went into this car, picking up this car originally, gosh, I think it's almost been 3 years ago. Then picking up another car as a donor car. We pulled the bodies off both of them. My wife and I have done hundreds of hours of work into this car. We pulled the motor apart, put it back together, refreshed everything. Every nut and bolt on this car has been turned. So guys, as you have been watching all this footage, hopefully you can kind of see our heart and souls have went into this car.